Sorry about that, babe.
Another one that's been on the backlog for quite some time and recently won a What Should I Cover Next poll, Bahamut Lagoon. Released in Japan on February 9th of 1996, Bahamut Lagoon is a tactical/strategy RPG developed and published by Squaresoft. Never making its way officially stateside, I conducted my playthrough on my Mr. FPGA utilizing the translation patch by Nier, which was released on June 1st of 2021. I found this translation patch to be really good, by the way. Well, I mean, at least I thought it was, since I'm not a native Japanese speaker and I haven't played the original game. But anyways, I'll leave a link to it in the description box below, which features a list of everything that it has to offer. The story. This is definitely the hot button topic for this game. As you guys know, I don't really go super in depth with the story in my reviews because I don't like spoilers, even on 20-plus-year-old games. But there is something that I want to touch on later on in the review, which will be chaptered accordingly, and is majorly spoiler-ridden, so be warned. Anyways, the gist of Bahamut Lagoon is as follows. The world of Orelus is made up of continents known as lagoons, and it's in a bit of peril. The kingdom of Kahna was long protected by its guardian, the dragon Bahamut. Unfortunately, Bahamut fell into a deep sleep, and during this time of slumber, the Granbelos Empire attacked the kingdom of Kahna. Not all was lost, however, as survivors from Kahna, along with some mercenaries, band together to create a resistance group, along with the assistance of the main character of the game. I named him Bits, but normally he's named Byuu, who is the leader of the dragon squadron. The crew then takes to the skies in their airship trying to locate dragons and save the world of Orelus. Now again, this is a very broad overview of the plot. There's many intricacies, politics, subplots, and a huge plot twist which I'd rather you experience on your own. I want to mention yet again that the translation patch by Nier did a great job with the story and dialogue, and it kept me interested and fulfilled throughout the game's 27 chapters and prologue. Graphics. With this being a later release on the Super Famicom, it's really no surprise that the graphics are a strong suit for Bahamut Lagoon. And I mean, look at it. For a strategy RPG of this era, it really doesn't get much better than this. Excellent colors, terrains and areas, nice battle sequences, sweet story cutscenes, fun dragon feeding times, and so on. It just looks great. There's really not that much else to say here, just let your eyes feast on the 16-bit beauty that is Bahamut Lagoon. Music and sound. Composed and arranged by Noriko Matsueda, and featuring sound engineering by Teruaki Sugawara, and sound programming by Hidenori Suzuki, Bahamut Lagoon has a pretty slick and varied soundtrack. While at times the OST can be a bit repetitive, but I mean I guess that could be said of most RPGs and games from this era, it does manage to hit on a bunch of levels. You have your upbeat tunes, major battle scores, melancholy moments, proper tracks for goofy times, and there was even one that sounded like it was plucked straight from Secret of Evermore. I thoroughly enjoyed listening and humming along during my journey. The sound design was adequate as well, conveying the battle clashing and other moments justly. I don't think this is a top tier soundtrack by any means, but again, I don't really have any complaints here other than I wish at times it was slightly less repetitive in a few spots, but perhaps that's just nitpicking. Controls. On the whole, I didn't have too many issues with Bahamut Lagoon in the control department. However, I will admit that at times the menus can be pretty clunky, whether it be outside of battle with buying and equipping, feeding dragons, or in battle with movements, cancellations, adjustments, or attacks. I don't think it's the most intuitive UI that I've ever experienced. That being said, other than maybe a few misclicks, there really wasn't much in the way of major roadblocks or control/menuing causing me issues with my gameplay and success. I'd say it's a bit of a mixed bag here with a slightly passing grade, and also big kudos to the sprint button, always a big fan of that in an RPG. I caught wind that perhaps the vanilla version of this game didn't have that, but I can't confirm, but at least the version that I played did, so thumbs up there. Gameplay and fun factor. First off, I just want to say that overall, I enjoyed the mechanics and systems within Bahamut Lagoon, and I had a good time. As mentioned, it's a tactical/strategy RPG, so the most important part is the battling system. You are able to control up to 6 parties featuring up to 4 characters each and a companion dragon. You have autonomy over said parties, being able to swap in and out whoever you please. The varying classes within Bahamut Lagoon play into said party construction. Your heavy armor characters hit like a ton of bricks and have smash moves. Conversely, the light armor class provides extra movement, which is paramount in most strategy RPGs, with Bahamut Lagoon being no exception. Traditional magic users such as mages focusing on more offensive magic, priests more of the healing and buffing variety, and summoners providing a battlefield tilting advantage with summoning, and a few other interesting stragglers sprinkled in as well. Typically, it's best to combine multiple classes in the same unit to fully realize their potential. A great example of this would be offensive mages. If one of them has a spell at level 10, that's where the spell power remains. However, if you combine a class of 4 mages with level 10, then you have a spell level of 40. Also, picking which dragon goes with the party is important, because that dragon could help provide more elemental spells for said mages. The way the battles play out are pretty standard. First, it's your turn, where you can move your parties, use items as you please from the menuing system, use field attacks to attack from afar or get up in their grill with melee, and you can also control your dragon's AI settings, which I'll touch on more a little bit later. After your turn is over, the battle switches over to the computer side and hopefully you can withstand their assault. One of the cool parts of Bahamut Lagoon are the terrain and gimmicks that ensue. Some quick examples are the following. If there's a body of water, you can cast an ice spell. It then freezes over, which could allow your party to advance further where otherwise it would be possibly bottlenecked. Conversely, if you use a fire spell on a forest, the forest would then catch fire, creating more damage for the enemy that you attacked, or if your party or dragons are on said forest, then you also sustain damage. The fire could then be put out the next move or turn with an ice spell, and vice versa, you could use a fire spell on ice that you created to get rid of it. Overall, pretty simple elemental mechanics, but effective. Other quick notes along these lines are thunder spells are great at destroying structures, healing spells could wipe out poison spots, and so forth. I also mentioned gimmicks. Bahamut Lagoon is ripe with them. Some sort of spoilery examples are the Chapter 9 battle gimmick where you can unleash a flood of water to damage the enemy party, or much later in the game like the Chapter 24 battle, where enemies are able to summon other enemies and swap them around on the map to keep you on your toes. Touching back on the dragons, while in battle they have AI controls. There's 3 options to choose: come, go, and wait. Pretty self-explanatory, but come generally means the dragon will follow your assigned party closely. Go means it will likely go ahead and start attacking. And wait means typically it will stay behind and be incredibly passive, likely not doing anything. Now I often say likely here because since it is AI controlled, though you can give commands, you don't have total autonomy over what said dragon will be doing. Focusing now on out-of-battle happenings, most chapters feature very interesting cutscenes and dialogue between the characters, and in some cases choice prompts which could yield something as simple as a number of cookie items gained, or as complex as an entire dragon being born. I often found myself wanting to exhaust all options in between battles, whether it be on the main airship talking to my crew, or in a town that we happen to be visiting, yakking it up with the townspeople. Aside from purchasing weapons, armor, items, and other various things like mushrooms and books, the most important out-of-battle game feature is dragon feeding. While your dragons also grow traditionally from in-battle experience, the most important thing for them is the feeding. Every dragon has HP and MP levels, elemental levels, 4 primary stats to level up, and some others. A quick crash course would be feeding a dragon an elemental grass will have that elemental stat rise. Feeding a dragon a weapon will help its attack go up. Feeding a dragon an armor with fire affinity, for example, will increase its defense as well as its fire elemental stat. Feeding a dragon one of the aforementioned books will help increase its wisdom. In general, it's pretty simple, but the game really isn't upfront about everything. There will be some trial and error. And dragon feeding is very important, as hitting the right stat requirements triggers dragon growth and transformations with the end goal of wanting to hit each and every master form for the best dragon possible. With a lack of knowledge, it's very easy to have an underfed or misfed dragon, leaving a lot to be desired. Oftentimes this will have the dragon head down the uni path, which brings forth some other issues as well. With the systems in place for battling, dragon feeding, and interesting dialogue and subplots, Bahamut Lagoon is sure to give you your money's worth in terms of time spent per chapter and overall interest. With all this being said, Bahamut Lagoon is not without its flaws. Critiques. While still fresh, I wanted to touch back on the dragon feeding. It's not incredibly intuitive. A dragon can be easily underfed with its prime never being reached, especially by way of the uni or black dragon path, which is incredibly easy to hit while feeding. Said path gives a half-decent dragon output, but the issues are the uni spells. While devastating, they seem to miss quite often, resulting in a big fat nothing. The most important thing for you to remember here is the panacea item that can cure your dragon of the uni form, reverting it back to its traditional grow path. I also wanted to mention that apparently Bahamut Lagoon's EX Play or New Game Plus mode features the ability to see exactly what each item will do for your dragon when fed, but from what I could see this is not present in the base game. You are also not able to access menus unless you're in a store, the pre-battle screen, or in battle. This is a minor annoyance, but an annoyance nonetheless, meaning you can't equip anything while farting around during the chapter traditionally. Rather, you'd have to book it to the nearest shop. Also, I'm not sure if I missed this, but I could not find an auto-equip feature either for weapons and armor. This would have been a great thing to cut down on time, especially considering that most chapters are huge time sinks if you're playing carefully and casually like I was. Speaking of playing carefully and casually, saving. Sure, if you're on a traditional emulator, this isn't an issue. But if you're playing on real hardware, or my version of the SNES on my Mr. FPGA, you can only save after a chapter is over or in a battle. That's it. This is incredibly annoying, as some chapters have tons of pre-battle happenings and scenes, or the same in the post-battle. The fact that there wasn't a save spot added to your airship, or perhaps inns in whatever town you're at, is incredibly stupid. Speaking of stupid, the Dragon AI. Okay, perhaps that's a bit harsh, but the Dragon AI can be a bit of a drag on. Anyway, though you do have the 3 commands for your dragons, I oftentimes found them doing exactly what I didn't want them to. For example, while selecting Go, a dragon would go way too far ahead, instead of just a little bit ahead, where all the attacking was going on, thus separating itself from the group. I also had plenty of times where we were near a fray, my dragon had tons of HP and MP and chose just to not do anything. I would have liked to be able to actually control said dragons manually, but I do kind of understand why they did what they did here, because my biggest gripe with Bahamut Lagoon is the difficulty of the game. It's simply put, well, not difficult. Out of the 27 chapters and prologue, I would say maybe 3 or 4 of them were actually hard-ish where you have to think a bit. Otherwise, this game is incredibly easy and becomes a bit of a slog because of it. Whether it be from the bottleneck terrains or the further that you go into the game where enemies and bosses have massive HP pools, thus resulting in a rudimentary spamming summons, good spells, hard attacks, replenishing HP and MP rinsing and repeating, facing nearly no actual threat of losing, just eating up your precious time with the illusion of a grand battle. Also, said tougher battles could be so out of place pace-wise that it could be a shock. There's a huge stretch of the game that's mind-numbingly easy. And then out of nowhere in chapter 22, it's probably the hardest battle of the entire game. But in general, if you feed your dragons well, have well put together parties and employ good strategies, you will have next to no issue clearing this game with ease. Bahamut Lagoon also offers up side quests for further leveling, but I quickly realized that that wasn't needed at all after I ran a few of said side quests. Later in the game some more challenging side quests pop up, but again, at that point I didn't really bother. Since it's not part of the main game, I didn't need the experience, and I didn't really care by then. Now don't get me wrong, I don't want to be sadistically punished while playing, but Bahamut Lagoon should have had a little bit more on the difficulty front. Or perhaps difficulty options? Aside from of course you just being a stupid player or not caring about your dragons, with those being really the only trials and tribulations. And this is something that I typically don't mention in my reviews because I can't really back it up with anything, but something just kind of felt off to me while playing. Don't get me wrong, I was intrigued, the game had a lot to offer, and in general I did have a good time. But I was never fully gripped by this one, and I can't quite put my finger on it. Oh yeah, and also the character Don Juan, incredibly annoying. Just wanted to mention that. Major spoilers ahead. I'm going to talk about the plot twist. This is something I don't typically do, but I felt like it was a decent talking point, so if you want to avoid a major spoiler, feel free to skip this section. The biggest plot twist in Bahamut Lagoon revolves around the main character Byuu, or Bits in my case, the female lead Yo-Yo, or Oneida in my case, and the character Paupeleios, basically the main antagonist. Throughout the early stages of the game, it seems like it's a traditional and sentimental love story between Byuu and Yo-Yo, even including a ceremony where they promise to be with each other. Well, as the game goes on, Yo-Yo becomes a prisoner and develops a bit of Stockholm Syndrome, and falls in love with Paupeleios. Though truthfully, he's not that bad of a person at all, as you get to see his story unfold throughout as well. And with all this going on, Byuu is basically left alone. I actually think the way this carries out and the way it's handled in the game is great. You should want to feel betrayed as the main character, and again, I felt like it was handled and conveyed appropriately. It wasn't over the top cheesy, it was rather adult, and things similar to this, you know, minus being a prisoner and all, happen often in real life. My only gripe with this whole ordeal is throughout the game you get illusion of choice prompts which make you think it will affect the outcome of Yo-Yo's thoughts and of the love triangle. But they actually don't mean a damn thing, as Byuu will get left in the dust no matter what you choose. And one last thing. Something to me that's a bit disturbing, as I've seen some scuttlebutt on the internets about this plot twist and so many people were legitimately butthurt by this. It was kind of astounding. I personally think it was a fresh take, especially for the time, where you don't have the traditional love story and happy ending. Life isn't always like that. Touching back on the disturbing mention though, I was shocked to see that people were legitimately offended by this and said that it ruined the game for them. Like it made them actually angry in real life. And sure, this could just be a minority of the fan base, and it probably was just that. But the fact that I even saw a few instances of this was pretty sad. I mean, come on people, it's a video game. If you're upset about the illusion of choice and not being able to affect the outcome, that's totally fine and understandable. I am too. But if you're upset because a 16-bit video game character that you might have named after yourself didn't get your in-game love interest, I mean, really? In summation, Bahamut Lagoon is an interesting take by Squaresoft on the strategy RPG genre. Technically impressive with beautiful graphics, a good soundtrack, an interesting story and dialogue, and a pretty fun battling system with brutes, mages, and dragons alike, gimmicks in battle to keep things fresh, a dragon feeding system, and an overall solid presentation, weighed down by a lackluster difficulty, some minor inconveniences in the way of menuing and overall slogginess, and an astounding lack of save opportunities. Overall, I give Bahamut Lagoon a 7.75 out of 10. If you haven't played it already, I certainly do think it's worth a playthrough, or perhaps even a revisit for the game's EX Game/New Game Plus mode for those Bahamut Lagoon veterans. Unfortunately for me, the game's overall lack of difficulty and subsequent slogginess took this down at least a point for me on my rating scale. I felt like Bahamut Lagoon could have been one of the all-time greats. Instead, it was just pretty good for me. Let me know what you guys think of Bahamut Lagoon in the comments below. All I ask is that you keep it civil. And until next time, take care.